My name is Surya. I'm 78 years old, and I need to tell you something that took me most of my life to understand. I believed every thought that entered my mind. I treated every fear like a warning. I treated every memory like proof. I treated every doubt like truth. And because of that, I suffered much more than I needed to. What changed my life was not making my mind quieter. It was realizing that my mind was not who I was. I know that sounds simple when you hear it for the first time, maybe even too simple. But when this realization becomes real inside you, not just interesting, not just spiritual, but real, everything begins to change. Your fear changes. Your pain changes. Your way of seeing yourself changes. Even your way of seeing other people changes. Let me explain why. I was born in a small village in northern Thailand, where life was hard and simple at the same time. There was little space for talking about emotions. People worked. People endured. People kept moving. If you were in pain, you stayed quiet and did what needed to be done. That was the way I was raised. So from a very young age, I learned to live inside my own head without understanding what was happening there. I had thoughts, of course, but I never questioned them. If my mind said I had failed, then I had failed. If my mind said someone was against me, then I believed it. If my mind told me I was not enough, I carried that feeling like a fact. You see, this is how many people live, not because they are weak, but because nobody ever teaches them that a thought is not the same thing as truth. When I entered the temple as a boy, I thought I was entering a place of peace, and in some ways I was. The temple gave me structure, it gave me discipline, it gave me silence, and that silence exposed something I had never truly seen before. My mind was not peaceful. It was loud. It was restless. It was always commenting, always judging, always comparing, always remembering, always predicting. At first I thought that was the problem. I thought the goal of spiritual life was to stop the mind. So I fought with it. Every time I sat in meditation and thoughts appeared, I treated them like enemies. I tried to push them away. I tried to become more pure, more still, more in control. But the harder I fought, the more exhausted I became. And here's what I didn't understand then. The mind becomes stronger when you make war with it. For many years, I thought spiritual practice meant building a better mind, a cleaner mind, a calmer mind, a more obedient mind. I judged myself by how peaceful my thoughts seemed on a given day. If I had a restless mind, I thought I was failing. If anger appeared, I thought I had done something wrong. If fear came up, I felt ashamed. I was living as if every thought was a reflection of my true self. And because my mind was full of movement, I believed I was unstable. I believed I was flawed. I believed I was still far from wisdom. Honestly, that belief caused me more suffering than the thoughts themselves. Because now I was not only feeling fear or sadness, I was also building an identity around those feelings. I was saying, this fear is me, this confusion is me, this anger is me. Years passed like that. I studied deeply. I listened to teachers. I memorized teachings. I guided younger monks. On the outside, I looked composed. People assumed I had found some kind of inner mastery. But inside, I was still trapped in a very basic mistake. I was identified with my own mind. I did not know there was a difference between awareness and thought. I did not know that I could observe my thoughts without becoming them. That may sound like a small misunderstanding. It was not. It shaped my whole life. There was one period, when I was in my early 60s, that forced me to face this directly. A close friend in the monastery passed away after a long illness. We had lived side by side for many years. After his death, my mind became very active. It replayed memories. It asked questions I could not answer. It created fears about my own body, my own aging, my own death. It told me I was next. It told me time was running out. It told me that everything I had built inside myself was fragile. I could not sleep well. I could not pray with full attention. Even when I smiled at others, there was fear moving underneath. I thought something had gone terribly wrong with me. I thought grief had broken my spiritual life. But what really happened was more important than that. One evening I was sitting alone after chanting, watching my own mind run in circles. The same thoughts, the same images, the same tension. And then something became clear in a way it had never become clear before. I noticed that there were thoughts, and there was also something that was aware of the thoughts. There was fear, and there was also something that could see the fear. There was mental noise, but there was also a silent presence that was not disturbed by the noise. That silent presence did not argue. It did not panic. It simply noticed. And for the first time, I began to understand something that had always been taught, but had never truly landed in me. The thoughts were happening in me, but they were not me. They were passing through awareness. They were not the awareness itself. What most people don't realize is that this changes everything. If you believe you are your mind, then every thought becomes personal. Every fear becomes identity. Every painful memory becomes a prison. Every mental habit becomes a destiny. But if you begin to see that thoughts arise and pass, and that you are the awareness witnessing them, then a space opens. And in that space, suffering begins to loosen. Not always all at once, not in some magical instant, but it loosens. A person can finally breathe. Let me explain this in a simple way. Imagine sitting beside a road and watching carts pass by. Some are noisy, some are heavy, some carry beautiful things, some carry unpleasant things. But if you are sitting beside the road, you do not become the cart just because it passes in front of you. Thoughts are like that. They move. They carry images, feelings, judgments, fears, memories. But because a thought passes through your awareness does not mean it defines you. The problem is that most of us jump onto every passing cart. We ride it. We become it. We let it take us wherever it wants to go. Then we wonder why we feel so lost. After that evening, my practice changed. Not immediately in its outer form. I still sat, I still breathed, I still prayed. But inwardly something was softer and clearer. I stopped trying to control every thought. I stopped expecting the mind to become permanently silent. I stopped using meditation as a way to force myself into a better version of myself. Instead, I began to observe. I began to notice. I began to let thoughts come and go without treating them all like commands. That was a great relief. I did not become free from difficult thoughts, but I became less owned by them. You know what surprised me most? The mind did not need to be fixed as much as I had believed. It needed to be seen clearly. That is different. A person can spend years trying to improve the mind and never know peace, because the one trying to improve is still trapped inside the mind's story. But when you become aware of awareness itself, when you begin to rest there even briefly, the whole relationship changes. You no longer need every thought to be kind. You no longer need every emotion to be easy. You no longer need your inner weather to be perfect before you allow yourself to feel whole. This realization also changed how I responded to pain. Before, if sadness arose, I would think, I am sad. If anger arose, I would think, I am angry. If anxiety came, I would think, something is wrong with me. Now I meet things differently. I notice sadness is here. Anger is here. Anxiety is here. Do you see the difference? It is small in language, but enormous in experience. In the first way, I become fused with the emotion. In the second way, I remain the one who is aware. That awareness has room. It has patience. It does not collapse so easily. This is also why people suffer so much from the stories the mind tells about the future. The mind says, what if this happens? What if I lose this? What if I fail? What if I am alone? And because people think they are the mind, they enter the story immediately. They feel it as if it is already happening. They build whole lives around imagined pain. I know this because I did it. I feared old age long before I became old. I feared loss long before loss arrived. I feared death long before death came near me. My mind created suffering in advance, and I obeyed it. I gave it authority it did not deserve. When I realized I was not my mind, I did not become passive or careless. I became more honest. I began to see that the mind is useful in many ways. It helps us remember, plan, communicate, and understand. The problem is not that we have minds. The problem is that we worship them. We treat them as masters instead of tools. We let them tell us who we are. We let them build identities out of pain and fear. We let them reduce life to constant commentary. And then we forget that life is happening before the commentary even begins. This realization changed my relationships too. When another person spoke from anger, I no longer reacted so quickly. I could see that they too were caught in their minds. They too were believing every thought, every wound, every fear. That brought more compassion into my life. Not because I became morally better, but because I could see more clearly. A person who is trapped in the mind suffers. A person who acts from that suffering spreads it. Once you see this, forgiveness becomes less dramatic and more natural. Now, at 78, I can say something with great certainty. You are not the voice in your head. You are not your constant inner commentary. You are not your worst thought. You are not your passing fear. You are not the memory that still hurts. You are not the mental image you carry of yourself. All of those things appear. All of them move. All of them change. But there is something in you that notices them. Something steady. Something quiet. Something that does not come and go in the same way. The more you begin to rest there, the more your life changes from the inside. That does not mean the mind disappears. Mine did not disappear. I still have thoughts every day. Some are peaceful, some are foolish, some are practical, some are heavy. But I no longer build my identity out of them. I no longer panic every time the mind becomes noisy. I no longer assume that mental activity means spiritual failure. This has given me a kind of freedom I once thought belonged only to the most advanced sages. But now I see it as much more human than that. It is available in small, honest moments of seeing. If these words are reaching you deeply, then stay with that feeling. Do not rush to turn this into another idea to collect. Let it become something you observe in your own life today. Watch your thoughts. Notice how quickly the mind tries to convince you that every passing thing is who you are. Then step back, even a little. Notice the one who is watching. That small shift can change a life. It changed mine. And if this message gave you language for something you have felt but never understood, stay close to this space. Share below what thought or emotion you have been identifying with for too long. There is power in naming it. There is relief in seeing it clearly. And if you want to continue walking through these understandings with me, remain here. Not to become someone else, but to remember more deeply who you already are beneath the mind's noise.